Hi students, welcome back to class.
Great job to everyone who's completed the review activities for simple tenses and continuous tenses. Make sure to let us know if you have any questions about that.
But this week we're going to move on to a very important competency required to move on to the 9th grade, analyzing literature.
Specifically, you need to be able to identify the characters in a story, the setting, the plot, the conflict, and the theme. So let's get started.
Let's get started by reviewing the different types of characters that you'll see in a story. So, what is a character? A character is just one of the people in a story. Now, within that category, there's different types of characters. So, the first one we're going to talk about is the protagonist. And we can think of the protagonist as the main character. Another type of character is the antagonist. And this is a character in the story who is in opposition to the main character. So, if this video were a story, I would probably be the protagonist, and Molly would probably be the antagonist.
Hey!
Now, let's talk about setting. What is the setting? The setting of a story is the time or the location. So if you look at this example, the time would be 3 o'clock, and the location would be a playground.
Okay, now I'm the protagonist.
No, she's not.
Next, you need to be able to identify the plot of a story. So the plot of a story is just the sequence of main events in the story. There are 5 parts to the plot. First is the exposition. This is the beginning of the story, when we get introduced to our main characters, the setting, and set the stage for the rest of the story. Then we have the rising action. This is where the main conflict or problem of the story is introduced, and actions begin happening that either create tension or suspense or begin building up to some big problem. Then we have the climax of the story. This is the peak of the story, the height of the action, the most suspenseful moment, and the moment where the protagonist comes face to face with the conflict and has to do something that will determine how the story ends. Then we have the falling action. This happens after the peak of the story and involves conflicts beginning to be wrapped up, some actions happening that bring us to the resolution of the story, which is the last part of the story, the ending, where conflicts are resolved and the story wraps up somehow. This can be a good ending or a bad ending, and sometimes all the conflicts are not resolved and we might end still with some things not figured out. But this is the ending of the story, the resolution. You can represent the different parts of the plot in a diagram known as Freytag's pyramid.
Wait, is that the Great Pyramid of Giza?
Get out of here, Jenny.
Aw.
This is a plot diagram. You can see the different parts of the plot represented. The exposition at the beginning, the rising action, which is all building up to the climax of the story, then after the climax, the falling action, leading to the resolution of the story, or the denouement.
Denouement.
Denouement. So that means the same thing as resolution. Extra credit if you can figure out how to pronounce that. But
Yeah.
that's the resolution of the story.
All right, now let's review the different types of conflict that you might see in a story. A conflict is a problem or a struggle between opposing forces. And the conflict is what actually drives a lot of the action in the story. Now, again, there's 2 types of conflict, or many types of conflict that might occur, but they're in 2 different categories, internal and external. So an internal conflict, an example of this would be character versus self. And in this type of conflict, a character is having some sort of internal struggle. Maybe they have to make a difficult decision and they don't know what to do. For example, should I have a hamburger or should I have pizza? Hamburger or pizza? Oh, I don't know. We also have external conflicts. So the first type of that is the character versus character conflict. And in this circumstance, it means that a character is having a fight with another character or some sort of struggle.
Hey, Jenny, we're in a fight.
Great example, Molly. A second type of example would be character versus nature. And in this circumstance, the character is having a conflict with something in nature. Maybe they have to go through a forest or a desert or...
Watch out, dinosaurs!
or fight dinosaurs. And then the last example is character versus society. And in this type of conflict, the character has a conflict with maybe a government or someone in power or society as a whole.
So lastly, this brings us to the theme. Now, to answer the question of what is the theme of a story, you have to think about why the author chose to write that story. Usually the author wants to teach the reader something or include some important message or lesson in their story. That's the theme. And usually the author will choose the characters, the setting, the plot, and the conflicts to give you clues about what the message or lesson that they're trying to teach you. So think about all those parts of the story we've already talked about, and then think about what lesson or message the author is trying to teach you, the reader, and what you learned from reading that story. So themes are usually related to big ideas about life and about the world. Some common themes that have shown up in stories we've read together are good versus evil, change, growing up, family, or perseverance.
Wait, how do we get up here? Aren't we normally... Well, that's the end of our lesson. We hope you enjoyed it and that you learned a lot.
Now go over to the Google Classroom, read the short story we posted there, and fill out the Google form to practice analyzing that story and identifying all these elements. If you have any questions, let us know.
Bye!
Bye!